Legend of War here, and today we've got a Saving Your Disaster economy campaign, playing as Arguelon. So, about 2 weeks ago, I started an Arguelon campaign on Mortal Empires with a specific theme in mind. Basically, to run the campaign as broke as possible, where our expenses couldn't possibly be covered by our income, and yet to make sure that those negative side effects would be mitigated as much as possible. Now, at the time, I thought it would lead to some pretty wonky game mechanics, but I didn't think it would get as wonky as it did. Now, if you had asked me about 2 weeks prior who was the strongest faction in the game, or who was the strongest race in the game, I probably would have said High Elves, or Bretonnia, or even Skaven. But after doing this campaign, I have to pretty much say that if you use this technique, that the Wood Elves are actually the strongest race in the game by an absurd degree. Because this is very easy to do as well. And I'm surprised this hasn't been like blown up a little bit more on the Reddit earlier. But anyway, as I start to zoom out here, you'll start to get an idea of just how ridiculous this campaign has gotten. These are full stack armies just in Athel Loren. Now, I don't own the entire world because in order to actually buy these units, I have to make money somehow. So I've left 2 factions alive, which I basically routinely blow up their settlements and allow them to recolonize it, so that I can, once again, loot their settlements in order to make money, because our taxes, we don't get any money from taxes, it all gets siphoned out. So there is a ridiculous number of armies here. If we have a look, I currently have to pay 68.5 million gold every single turn to my armies, which is ridiculous. Not even the High Elves can pay for those kind of numbers, especially by turn 207. So, how many armies exactly do I have? 432. Now, at this point here, I noticed that one of the game's fundamental mechanics actually broke down. It actually broke down a little while ago, but I only noticed it now because, well, I'll get into that in just a moment. So, the goal in mind here was actually to try to push the economy as wonky as possible to actually make this negative income turn into a positive. The way of doing that is using an integer overflow. Now, you can actually do an integer overflow in Total War Attila as the Eastern Roman Empire. If you just keep pressing end turn and keep rolling just higher and higher interest rates, eventually your treasury will hit the integer overflow, and at 2.14 billion, it'll just reset your treasury, because there is no negative treasury in Total War Attila, and then you basically just start again with no economy. So basically from 2.14 billion, just go straight back to 0. But with this, I was going with the income to try to go from a negative to a positive by going so far negative that the game couldn't count it, and started going positive but started counting it backwards from the positive. But that has now seemed a bit too ridiculous due to one of the game's core mechanics actually breaking down. And that is the army upkeep increase percentage. This mechanic has actually broken down and no longer is functioning at this point in the campaign, which I was counting on. In order to get to 2 billion, within a reasonable time frame, I technically still could if I want to put about 100 extra hours into this, because 68 million is about 3% of the way to 2.14 billion. So I would need about 3,000 or 4,000 turns to get there, and I just don't have that much time, because I've already put in like 2 weeks into this campaign. So, and I know that CA is really keen to patch this as soon as possible. I'm not going to be able to do this, basically. I just don't have the time to dedicate to do that. Anyway, so if you're wondering how did we get to this point and not have like the campaign collapse in on us? There's a fundamental oversight that's always been in the game, but I just never really know. I've been aware of it for a while, but I didn't notice it until recently, until somebody actually pointed it out to me. But we're not taking any attrition because of a technology here, Estrith, the Lord of Hunger, which grants us immunity to attrition all armies. Funnily enough, though, it doesn't grant you immunity to attrition from Skaven Plague, but that's the only one. So you go through any of these like vortexes, no attrition. Go through the desert, no attrition, and that includes bankruptcy attrition. But what the downside is that you don't get any replenishment. So the workaround from that is to use single entity units such as forest dragons or treemen. I personally prefer treemen because they have higher hit point pools and much larger resistances. And basically just utilize the Law of Life, which every treeman general can get quite easily. And after every battle, well, during every battle, you just keep healing. And there's some battles which you would use to just heal your troops up, and you would go through it without actually taking much damage at all. And that being said, even if you did lose the odd troop here and there, you'd be making so much money through other means that you just replace them immediately, but you never have to pay them. So since the Wood Elf economy is sort of backwards from everyone else's, except for very similar to the Greenskins, I suppose, they don't make much money through taxes, right? That's not how they make money. They make money by fighting battles and demolishing settlements. You demolish, say, a level 5 Skaven Blight, you could easily get 120,000 gold. And then all you have to do is spend that money quickly. So what I did then was store that money in global recruitment. So you can see here in global recruitment, I've actually stored up 96 turns. Now this isn't the end of it. There's some out there that have like 140 turns, if I could just find them. Yeah, look, that one there, 153 turns. That's until it starts, until it's finished. And that's with me at the max level of global recruitment slots, which is 30. You can't go above 30 currently. So that'd take a long time. That's how much money I stored off. So basically, if you ever need money, you just cancel the recruits, and you've got instant money. And that way you stop having to pay your troops every turn. Because what it does is it'll just take away all the money that you've got left at the beginning of your next turn from the treasury, which will include all of your income. And then you just make as much money during that turn by demolishing people's settlements, by going around getting the treasured stuff around the islands, like this one here, as an example, and then store it in global or in local recruitment, like I've done over here in Lothern. So I've queued up a lot of local recruitment here. And every now and again, an event will pop up as well that will reduce the Treeman recruit cost by 50%, and then because of the high elf settlements, if you build this here, you can reduce it by an additional 30%. So I was actually recruiting Treeman at 225 gold per Treeman, which is really cheap, especially considering just winning like a minor battle could net you like 2,000 gold. So that's like a half an army of Treeman just there. But anyway, so what's happened here is that the army upkeep increase has actually broken down. If we have a look at the units now, they currently cost 16,313 each. For every single Treeman that I own, that's how much it costs. Now that's also with the Sword of Cain. And what happens now is that if I do recruit a new lord, you would expect their base upkeep to increase by 15%, but it no longer does. We've reached a cap with that. So basically, in order for me to hit to 2 billion, I would have to recruit 33 times as many units as I currently have. And if I was to show you, just like, look, this is gonna break the game, just pressing that button. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot. Not every single army that I have has troops in them, because they're still recruiting. Because the thing is with Wood Elves as well, is that you can't recruit from every province. There are some outside of Athaloran and the main settlements that you can recruit. So for example, let me take that off. For example, any elven ports, you can actually recruit Hawk Riders. Over here, you can recruit Hawk Riders. There's a couple of them around the place. So there's one here in the Star Tower, and Arnheim is also a region where you can recruit some more. So I was just recruiting from anywhere I possibly could. Didn't matter if it was Treeman or whatever. And just really trying to break the game at its fundamental levels. And I was hoping that this would be the first mechanic that broke, but unfortunately for me, it was this one here. So at this point here, we can't increase the upkeep of the individual Treeman any further than this, short of blowing up the Oak of Ages, but I don't know how I can do that, because the Oak of Ages reduces our upkeep cost by 25%. But just to put that in perspective, that's 25% of the base upkeep, so it would really not save us that much money at all. And also, to give you a bit of perspective as well on how much of an increase that is on their base upkeep. The base upkeep, I believe, for a Treeman is 375. So this is actually 4,350% more than their base upkeep. So I would say that this mechanic here broke down quite a while, but I just didn't notice because the number kept increasing. But what I noticed was that even though I kept recruiting new armies, I was expecting things to accelerate, but it just wasn't. I was basically increasing my upkeep by about 800,000 every single turn, and it kept being like linear every single turn, 800,000 every single turn. And I thought something was going wrong here, and then I noticed that when I was recruiting new lords, it just didn't increase our upkeep any further. And that's where the game just broke down, and that's where I basically ended it. Now, this game is obviously already won, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow you guys to download the save file and play around with it as much as you like, because I put in a lot of time into this, and all the infrastructure that you need to mess around is still here. Also, by the way, the weapon strengths on most of the units, because I didn't build the economy building, I just built this one everywhere. I didn't build everywhere because, you know, it just got ridiculous after a while, especially since I was using treemen and the melee bug still exists, so they weren't actually doing any more damage. But the garrisoned Deepwood Scouts were one-shotting things, basically. They had so much damage. Now, that's actually not a bug. This is just what happens when you own this many settlements as Wood Elves. But yeah, I'm going to allow you guys to download the save file and play around with it yourself. Now, CA have actually sent me a message saying that they are keen to fix this. It would be a pretty easy fix. All they have to do is basically exclude bankruptcy attrition from this immune to attrition list, and then boom, that's it, it's done. Now, these units can still stay here, but we'll start taking constant attrition, and getting this to 2 billion is just not feasible. But anyway, this is the culmination of this campaign. I just thought I'd update you about this. If you want to start your own Arguelon campaign, it's real simple. You just rush straight to this, and then once you've done that, you just don't stop recruiting. Even when your negative income is just ridiculous, you just don't stop recruiting, and you'll be fine. But I don't imagine this is going to last any more than, say, a couple more weeks before a patch comes through and just puts an end to this. At which point the Wood Elves will routinely go straight back to being one of the weakest races in the game instead of ridiculously overpowered currently. Anyway, that's the end of this video here. I hope you've enjoyed my explorations into this broken mechanic. I've certainly enjoyed it, but I think it's time to put a stop to it now, because getting to 2 billion is just, it just takes too long, and I just don't have time. I've got other disasters and stuff I need to do, as long as live streams as well. I'm only able to dedicate like an hour a day to this. I'm not going to get it done in time. Anyway, that's the end of this one. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time, fuckers.